I was young, I was reckless. So I felt that I was invincible. I felt that I never was going to die. And as you get older, mortality sets in and you realize you're not going to live forever.
Okay, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. And I am here with a gentleman today named Jeff Harris. And so super excited, as I say it every single time, because I get the opportunity to interview some unique people, some people who have been doing some things in our community and have been making things happen in a way that just makes a difference in people's lives. And, today when we talk about, one of the things of our 5 pillars is talking about our health and talking about the things that make us, whether it's physical health or mental health or, our overall, how are we able to help others? And throughout the miracle of life, Jeff explained to me that he's been able to have not one, but he's on his second kidney, where somebody's been able to, through, the process of giving life, has been able to help him out. And so he is still here. He is still vibrant. He has still got everything in his life working for him, despite some of the challenges. And there's times where we sometimes make excuses. We make excuses as to why we can't move forward or why we can't do the things that God has put us on this earth to do. And so when you see examples of people who say, yes, God put me on this earth to do certain things, and yes, I have some challenges, and yes, it didn't go the way that it went for everybody else, but I'm still here, I'm still going, I'm still helping. And we all have had people in our lives where we say, okay, so they tell us, well, I'm not going to be able to do that, because such and such happened. And sometimes there are things that are not as, extreme as having to have some type of surgery, or extreme as, there's so many people that have been part of our armed services that has served. And, Jeff is one of them. And thank you for your service, Jeff. And you think of, sometimes they come back and they don't have, a leg, or they don't have, an arm or something like that. And when I was working in homeless services, sometimes we would get some of their vets. And I can remember I had a friend named Alfonso that was part of the homeless community, and he was a vet. And so we started working, and he had big visions and things we can do. And we got him back on track. And, now he has, a job that he loves, and he's able to give back into the community and do the things. And he said, you know what? It just took somebody that believed in me, that wasn't ready to leave me out on the street, that, through all the things that I went through when I was in Iraq, all the things that happened there, I was still able to come back. And then feel like there was nobody that was around, but now we're in a community of people, and I can do anything. And I love that spirit, and I love the fact that can happen. And so, Jeff, I can't wait to hear your story. I can't wait to hear the things that you've done in life. And just like I said, I appreciate you as a person that you are, and the things that you've been able to do and accomplish for the folks that are part of your community and your world. And so maybe, Jeff, you can just start with your story. Like I tell most of my guests, start wherever you want in your story. You can be a little kid, or you can start later in life. But we do love to hear who you are and what you're doing.
All right, I'll try to do this in a snapshot there, Brian. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, and the year 1957. U.S. Steel was big, and our family actually migrated from Georgia, Thomasville, Georgia, all the way up to Ohio. And I'm sure many of them traveled on the Underground Railroad. I've traced my roots back, my great-great-grandparents, to 1790. That would give you any indication. So majority of my family worked in this steel mill. And in the mid-'70s, when the steel mill started to decline, we shifted to New Jersey, industrial, still blue collar, but the big half of the family is in New Jersey, New Brunswick, home of Rutgers. And also, the other big half is in Youngstown, Ohio, and we have people everywhere. So I was a young guy that wouldn't listen to anyone. And I worked in the meat market from the age of 11 to 17. And I had to do other things because at that time, the drug market was large. I only lived 15 miles from New York City. And that was the heyday of Uncle Orange and such characters. And I had to get out of there. So I joined the military and I joined the infantry. So from private to staff sergeant, I was an infantry guy, trained killer. And I was tired of being cold and wet. And I switched over to the chemical corps, chemical warfare. And I still was cold and wet. So I did 22 years of service. I met my wife there in the military, and she did 22 years also. I have two daughters. One is 40, one's 41. My son is 37. So I've been around the world a few times, seen more than I need to see. I hated school growing up. And once I retired, I figured out I wasn't making enough money. So I went back to school. I completed my master's degree in criminal justice, Tarleton University, and that's here in Texas. And I did it in 18 months. So my last semester of school, 9/11 happened, and I was one of the first individuals of color to go into the homeland security field. I was one of the first guys on the weapons of mass destruction team. I did post 9/11, the space shuttle crash, Hurricanes Ivan, Gustav, Katrina, anthrax, Ebola crisis, earthquake in Haiti, the I-35 bridge, and a few other things I can't talk about right now.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for another 18 years, and my kidneys started to give me some issues. And one of my sergeant majors, this guy was a stern guy. I hate using the term redneck, but he was misunderstood. But he was just one of those guys that was straight by the book, good Christian guy. And if you worked for him and you're doing your job, you had no problems. Anyway, he ended up being a match for me for my first transplant. And I got calls from all around the world because people didn't think it was the same individual who they thought it was. And they did a big article in the newspaper here locally in Killeen. I live in Harker Heights, which is adjacent Killeen, which is home of Fort Hood / now Fort Cavazos, the largest military installation in the free world. So you can imagine it was a pretty large article. And so a lot of people called and want to know, was this the same guy? Congratulations, so on and so forth. And so I went back to the same job. I worked a few more years and started having issues with that kidney after about 9 years. And I spent the next 13 on dialysis. Last June, I received a cadaver kidney, which is doing well. But while on dialysis, I had a different outlook on life. I'm a seasoned combat veteran, and like I said, I've seen more than I probably needed to see. But it gave me a different perspective on dialysis, and I became an advocate within that facility. I developed a program which was called Empowered Dialysis, whereas usually the patients come in, they sit down, they watch TV for 4 hours, read a book, or for the majority of the time, they just sleep. And this program, what it did was taught them how to build their machines, how to monitor it while they were on it, how to break the machine down. So it gave them a more cognizant viewpoint of how this whole dialysis thing worked and a better insight into their health, as far as being able to read their labs, understand which part of their labs they need to concentrate on, such as sodium intake, phosphorus, etc. So many dialysis clinics has adopted this program, and of course I put a copyright on it. And I got great reward out of it. And while doing that, I became a spokesperson for the National Kidney Foundation because I understood I could make a difference. And you see all age groups on dialysis, from young kids to the elderly, all different flavors and all different backgrounds, all different cultures. And that's what I enjoy. And I'm still involved. After the second transplant, the steroids have given me onset of glaucoma, which is giving me some sight issues. But pretty much that's where I'm at right now. So, Dr. Arnold, go ahead. What you have for me?
No, I love it. I'm trying to think of all the places we can go here, right? Because there's so much that you've packed into your life. The fact that you, because of something that happened to you, you have a need for a kidney, and you're sitting there and you're having to go through the dialysis process, which can be this, where it basically takes all the blood out of your body and changes it and cleans it out and puts it back in, right?
Whole change.
The whole changing, and some people have to do that every day. I have a cousin, I know that she's figured out how to do it at home every day. She has lupus and has been doing it for the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years that she's been doing it. But you took that and said, okay, this could be something that I could not move forward in life with, but you changed it into something that made a difference in others' life, which is so huge that everybody, doesn't matter what our circumstances are, you found a way to make a difference and make, and you're able to copyright it, make it part of a business, make it part of all these things that you could do. So I just want to say, appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You said in your story that you could trace your roots back to 1790. You didn't say 1890. You didn't say 1990. You said 1790. There's got to be some stories or something that are in there that if you were able to find out, just give me a little glimpse, because I can't imagine in 1790 that your ancestors had the same type of life that you have right now. So what kind of talk to us a little bit about what that looked like?
Well, the 12th of October was my mother's heavenly birthday. She would have been 102. Okay. And my grandfather was born in 1899.
Okay.
And so it wasn't too hard. I have a couple cousins and myself. We all took some different areas and kind of triangulated it. But I'm not one of the oldest, but I guess I'm one of the oldest with a large spectrum of our genealogy. I have a first cousin. She's 105. I have another one. Her sister is 95, and the next one is 80. And so I'm on the lower spectrum of that, but I'm the one. My mother was the hub of the family, so she had all the spokes in the wheel. So it was pretty easy to trace back with what she had told me. And anyone that's kind of interested in looking at your genealogy, everything bounces off the 1910 census. And so what I did was I looked at the chronological aspects of it, and I looked at triangulation. I looked at birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates. If two or more are triangulated, then more than likely it was true.
Okay.
And so then I took some of those names and branched off, especially the female members of the family, because if they got married, they had a name change. So I had to track it back to there. So it was pretty simple from there, from my grandfather to his parents. And then my great grandparents were the ones who went back to 1790. And I haven't got past there, but I'm pretty sure from what I understood my mother saying that they were the ones that came over on the ship. I call them the Kunta Kinte family. And Dr. Arnold, I thought I read something in some of your writings recently. I kind of just scanned over a lot of the information that you had out there, and you had something about Draytons, the Drayton family.
Oh, yeah, that I don't know. That could be with my sister and stuff does a lot of the genealogy for me. The part that I know in our family is I like. There's so many sides, right? You just like which grandparent do you go backwards on? I have a
Right.
grandma who was born on a reservation in Oklahoma, so
Mm.
she's part of the Choctaw Nation. And then I have on my dad's side, my dad's father was a white man who married a black woman in 1930. So you can imagine what his life turned into like in the 1930s or the 1920s
Oh
when
yeah.
they got married, and then his family being disowned. That's where the Arnold part comes from. But my grandma was like one of the first graduates from Kansas State as a musician back in the 1920s. Which black women, and she started teaching there and stuff, and then she decided to marry this other guy. And then my grandfather on my mom's side, we can trace back to plantations that are in Kentucky, and so it just goes, you try to do all these things and figure out, and you hear stories. I have the even just as not that long ago, my mom, as she was growing up, she can remember my grandma had to flee from Oklahoma to California because um, her brother had injured, or I believe he maybe even killed a white man in Oklahoma.
Oh
This
yeah.
is how the story goes, and so they fled, so they weren't killed from the reservation, and then they changed their name. So my mom's birth certificate says that she's Ethiopian because that was the only country in Africa that my grandparents have ever heard of. And so they wrote that on the birth certificate so they could hide from anybody finding them. My mom is obviously not has no roots to Ethiopia. I think when we do our DNA stuff, it drives back.
Right.
It's so amazing when you go through there. And I was telling you the story. My grandfather had a farm, and he also took care of horses and cattle for the people that were in the agriculture area of California in the Central Valley. And she tells a story when the farmers believed that one of her brothers, my uncles, were looking at her daughter, which was a white daughter, that was there, and these black children were now eyeing this white daughter, and so they showed up with their hoods on, in my grandpa's yard, demanding that my uncles come out so that they could hang them.
Right.
And my grandpa said, I take care of your horses. I know exactly who you are. And if you don't leave, you will all be dead. So it was a standoff. Uncles didn't come out. So we have many stories like that in our family that go back.
Right.
And you wonder, like, so we got to Kentucky, that's where I can go back, and the plantation was there, and that kind of stuff. And I start thinking about all these different things. And part of the Journey to Freedom program is going back to Alabama and seeing what the South is all about. Now, your family, you said, was from like the Georgia area, right? Before you came up to Ohio.
Right. On my mother's side, so my grandfather, the patriarch side, but that's pretty interesting on your side because my biological dad, his roots came up out of Alabama, up through Harlan County, Kentucky,
Okay.
and they had I have some half brothers and sisters that we just united within the last probably 18 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And the oldest brother that's living now, he just went to the Harlan County, they call it the Harlan County Social Club. And what it is a big family reunion of all those that came up through Kentucky there
Okay.
with my grandfather's roots. And I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah, 2024, the Social Civic Club, the Eastern Kentucky. I got it. Yeah.
yeah. And so a lot of the individuals in here are my biological dad's people.
Okay. I love it. I love it. So when we think about that now, we were able to find out where we came from, which is so important.
Sure.
Well, how did that affect your identity? What do you think by knowing some of those stories and knowing where you came from. How did that, encourage the identity that you have? Now, you grew up mostly in Ohio, I believe is what you said, and your community there and how people took care of each other there. It seems like there was communities back then that, you went outside and you were playing with the other folks, and the whole community took care of you. Unlike today, where everybody puts their garage door opener up and pull into their garage and shut it down, and
Sure.
you don't know all your neighbors. How was your identity shaped as a young kid in the North, I guess, that had been from the South, which I think a lot of the communities were?
Um, well, growing up in Ohio, I had a good childhood. I had a surrogate family that kept me for a while,
Okay.
and I had a lot of blood family there in Youngstown. So we're all still connected and been like that. My nieces, my nephews, even though they're not blood, but we're connected through the surrogate portion of it. And it was one community. I can remember just I had a happy childhood. Um, Even with my cousins, my friends growing up, the neighbors, they swapped vegetables. You did something wrong, neighbor got you, and then by the time you got back down to grandmom's house, you got another one.
Hmm.
And that's the way it was. And so New Jersey was the same way. I don't know what I'm clicking on. Can you still see me?
I can see you. Yeah, you're
All
there.
right, good. I won't be touching nothing else over here. Um, Growing up in New Jersey, pretty much the same. Um, I was back and forth to Ohio every summer, spend the summers there. But in New Jersey, I had a lot of cousins. We were same age, and we're still all close. And same thing, tight community, tight knit community. Um, like you don't see a lot of that now. You see
Yeah.
some of it, but it's not like it used to be. And I think we were more homogeneous
Hmm.
as a culture. Um, I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed growing up there, and that's probably where I really start cultivating some type of identity. Each and every person has some kind of impact upon you, but I think it was stronger growing up those years in New Jersey because there were different people there and different, different in the Midwest.
Did you grow up in a black community, or was it a pretty mixed community?
In Jersey,
And Ohio, I guess, wherever you grew up.
well, in Ohio was pretty segregated, but um, the blacks lived mostly on the south side, the east side, the north side, but it was all sectional, and that was the beginning of the white flight.
Hmm.
Um, didn't know it at that time. I can remember going into a meat market and my grandmother and I would have to be all the way at the end of the counter, and everyone else would get served, and then the butcher would come down and take care of her. It never dawned on me, and I'm talking 65, 64. So this thing was going on, but I had no idea exactly what was going on, the racism. Um, I've got my kindergarten picture. I probably can count the white people in it. Yeah, one of my cousins. I was in the morning. He was in the afternoon, and I sent it to him a couple of months ago. He said, "Where did you get that from?" And I said, "Well, my sister had it." And he says, "Man," I said, "Nobody has this picture." And he was the president of the graduating class there, and he sent it to a couple guys. He says, "You remember these two guys?" I said, "Yeah, the twins. I remember them. I don't remember their name." He said, "They're still living, and they're in Columbus." And he sent me a picture of them now, and he sent that picture to them, and they were like, "Where did you get this from?" I said, "Nobody has this picture."
Wow. Wow.
So Jersey was the same way. We had our area. You strayed to the left, to the right, and you were in a white section. Predominantly white, Jewish, Hungarian, um, That was pretty much it in New Brunswick at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you go into the military.
Sure.
Did you do that right after high school, or did you spend time
In
working other
jail?
places?
Time in jail? No.
Oh no.
Well, I graduated in June of 75. I was in trouble in August, and my mother was not having it. And I worked, several little jobs. I worked in the factories. I worked in forklifts, still doing the thing in the meat market. And it just wasn't getting it done because it was the 70s. So different time, different area. My mother was like, you know what? Mm-mm. And my oldest brother, with my mom, he was a Vietnam vet. And I said, man, I'm going to the military. I gotta go. And I said, I'm leaving Monday. He said, what? And I said, yeah, I'm out of here. And he told me all the things, what to do and not what to do. And on his deathbed, we laughed. He died 4 years ago. He had been a 31-year firefighter, and pancreatic cancer caught up with him. But it was funny because he was on his deathbed and he says to me, he says, Jeff, I got to call the bet off. I said, what bet? He said, man, I've been betting on you all these years. You wasn't going to make it.
Oh, wow.
He said, a little joker that wouldn't listen to nobody. He said, you did time in the military, a career, then you did a career with Homeland Security. You got your master's degrees, and mom and the ancestors are smiling down on you. And I had to step back and lean back because he was right. And it was funny because I went to a pilot program in Rutgers Prep, and I was actually I was trying to get into the bad kids school because I wanted to be cool, and I ended up in the wrong building. And our principal at the time, she spoke almost 20 different languages, a sister, and her name is Penelope Kirkendall. And you think Kirkendall, you didn't think she was black. And, she was like, young man, have a seat and I'll be with you. And she was very proud. She worked her way all the way up to becoming the superintendent of education for the state of New Jersey. And one of my classmates who I grew up with on my street, she's been teaching 40 years at least. And so she set me at head table with her and Penelope at one of our reunions because they had voted me most likely not to succeed.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
I wasn't a bad kid, but I was just, one of those David Susskind kids, at 10 p.m. We know where your kid, do you know where your kid is? One of those guys. Yeah. And, we ride by Rawway Penitentiary, and my brother-in-law said, you see that light on up in that dome? I said, yeah, brother-in-law. He said, you keep going where you're going. He said, you're going to be right up there with the rest of them. And I was like, not me. And so I joined the military. I told my brother on a Monday. The next Monday, I was out of there. Mm-hmm. Yep. Best thing I ever did.
Wow. So you're in the military, and like you said, you end up, you have a career there. You get out from the military, then you decide to go back into Homeland. What were some of the, after you got your education, what was the driving force for moving into Homeland and to saying, hey, this is where I believe I can truly make a difference? Was it they were calling you and bugging you, or was it you just said, this is where I want to be?
It was God's will. And people that don't think God is real, I'm not understanding that. I might need to do some research on that one. So I'm in my last semester, and I get a call. And my colonel and the same sergeant major that gave me the kidney were still in the suit. They were in green suits. And they said, Jeff, you understand what happened yesterday, 9/11? I said, yeah. And he says, well, we got an offer for you. I said, what is it? He says, you got to come to San Antonio and get a classified briefing. I said, well, I'm in school. I've been out 2 years, sir. He says, don't worry about it. He says, we'll have your dossier, your clearance, and everything pulled. When can you get down there? I said, I can get down there tomorrow. And he said, Sergeant Major will call you tonight with further instructions. And he did. I went down there. I got the briefing. After the briefing, I swore in the same day.
What?
I swore in the same day as a GS9. That was somewhere about $63K a year. And the next year I was a GS11, which was right about 67, 68, 69, somewhere in there. And then I did that for a period of time, and that's when my kidneys gave me problems. And I went out, I did the master's, I came back, I went to the same desk, same job, same cubicle. And I was making $10,000 more just because I had a master's degree. Nothing changed. And so they called me and they said, we're putting a team together and we're looking for some good guys, and you're at the top of the list. And
so were you living in Texas at the time, or were you in the East somewhere and you had to fly to Texas to get to
No,
family?
I was here in Texas. I was in school. I'm 2 hours from San Antonio.
Okay.
And so I shot down there and I did the whole deal. But before I swore in, I said, I got one problem. They said, what's that? I said, I'm on my last semester of school. They said, well, don't worry about it. We'll fix that. And what they did was brought me in as a contractor and paid me $60 an hour until the position opened up.
Wow.
That's nothing but God.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Speaking of God, how has your faith played a part in your life and the things that you do and how you make decisions and how you move forward? How has your faith played a part in that?
Honestly, Brian, when I was young, I was reckless.
Okay.
Because I felt that I was invincible. I felt that I never was going to die. And as you get older, mortality sets in, your warranty starts to wear off the body, things start to crack, break, and you realize you're not going to live forever. And you look to your left and look to your right. And that's one thing we did in the military. You go out on a mission, you look to your left and you look to your right, and you know one of us might not come back, but you don't talk about it. And so I always had faith. I always believed in God. I was brought up in a Kojic church, Baptist church, Kojic. It all depended on what part of town I was on, what cousin and what aunt I was with. So well-rounded, cousins that were Muslims, went to the mosque, and I just had a wide spectrum of religion. But for the most part, I'm a Baptist guy. And faith is one of the, in the Bible, that's what, Hebrews 11. That's one of my favorite chapters there. The absence of things not seen, but the substance of things hoped for. And so I stand on that because I've seen God work miracles after miracle, just like the song goes. Wow. And faith is it's strong. It's not just physically, it's a mental thing. It's a mental and it's a celestial, spiritual point of view. And I stand on that. Yeah.
All right. I love it. What does it mean to you to be a dad? Talk to me about being a dad. Talk to me about being a dad. What did that mean for you while your kids were growing up? And
it was very meaningful. I took a lot and still take a lot of pride in it. One of my daughters, she lives in North Carolina, and she has a 21-year-old. My other daughter that's here, she doesn't have any children. And then my son, he's 37. He has a 5 and a 3-year-old. And I see a bit of each and every one of them, of me in them. And I have to laugh at that. And my son, he's on me all the time now. Me and him did a bank transaction this morning. And he said, see, Dad, he said, you don't listen to me. He said, I'm telling you, this is what you need to do. I said, you telling me, you asking me? He said, I just told you, I'm telling you. So that's how that goes. And he has he has a very strong personality. He graduated from Texas A&M. He followed me criminal justice. He was a Dallas cop for 4 years. He got sick and tired of the corruption. some of the things that dirty cops do. And he was like, I gotta go. He says, I ain't no rat and I'm not no snitch, but I'm out of here. And so he left there, went back to school, became a school teacher. For the last 10 years, he's been teaching third and fourth grade. His specialty is math and science. Last summer, summer before last, because last summer was important. Summer before last, he went to the fire academy. He's an EMT, EMS, hazmat firefighter guy on his resume. But teaching is where his passion is right now. And I said, you're still in the public service business. You're still making a difference.
Yeah.
But when I look at him, I can't get mad because when I see him, I see me.
Oh, that's awesome.
My daughters, same thing, except they got pretty faces.
I love it.
And I tell people all the time, I said, don't let that pretty face fool you. She'll get you.
All right. I love
and
it.
So, it's very rewarding. Parenthood is very rewarding. And to see them grow and prosper and do well for themselves, get a house, try to save some money, make good decisions, stay out of trouble, stay the course, keep the faith, and everything, you keep God first and everything else will find its natural order. And they're at that age where they're like, I see what you're talking about, Pop. I see what you're talking about. And I can appreciate it. Sure.
So I want you to put on your experience hat, because you've been on this planet for a few years. And, when I'm thinking of the Journey to Freedom and the program that we've kind of put together is, we have a lot of folks that are part of our lives when most of the time when you're younger. So when you're,
Sure.
You're in high school and you get into the college age and you get going in your life. But something happens somewhere around that, when you hit 25, that people think that you're grown, you know how to do everything, and they kind of start separating and then let you go do your own thing. And in many cases, that's great. But also, we also need help. Sometimes we need mentors, we need associations, we need people. If you were to design, because I know you know how to design things based on your kidney experience, a program that were to help people, young men that are after 25 to, 70, I guess, somewhere, in those age ranges, what kind of things would you want them to learn and do? What are the things that you would say, this is where you should go back to school, or these are some of the areas you should be in, or you should hang out in these places? What are some of the things you think you should do, and maybe some of the things that you should maybe avoid doing?
25 to 70.
Well, let's say 25 to 50. While you're trying to help somebody. You go to 70, I guess there's some people that, I'm not going to say life is over at 50, because you're now in your late 60s, right? And you're able to, right. Still going, still doing stuff. So, yeah, 25 to 70, I think works. Yeah.
Well, you have to assess each and every one of those. Mm-hmm. We'll start with the 25 group. If the individual graduated from high school, they're working, we'll say a blue collar job. We'll just use that example.
Okay.
Because we got some variables there. And the individual says, man, I'm not making enough money. I've got a part-time job. I've got a girlfriend. I've got a kid. Mm-hmm. I seem like I'm stuck. Well, you're never stuck. You might be marking time and place, but you're never stuck. And you have to condition that mind where they say, well, I've got to do something different because this isn't working for me. So what can I do to make this different and still fulfill what I need to fulfill? Well, you've got that child, you have your girlfriend. So they have to have an integral part of your decision-making process. Mm-hmm. That individual, for me, I think at that age group, I'll say 25 to 40. I'll say 25 to 55. That's a good range. you have to go back to school to get some type of education. And you have to like what you're doing. Likability is 98% of whatever you're doing in life, and the other 2% is showing up.
Okay.
So you have to find out what you want to do. Try to go back to school. If you have to work and take one class online once a semester, you keep chipping away, and you'll get to that point where you can take 2 classes or 3 classes. You have to tune yourself up. Take a tune-up class. Okay, this class wasn't too hard. It was okay. I got it into my little time frame of my work. I can get home. I can do my assignment online. I can get my reading done over the weekend. I can get this little pop test done. And then after another semester, you take 2 classes. Try not to take 2 hard classes at the same time. You take a hard class and maybe an easy class, and you'll eventually achieve your objective. Now, from 55, I would say 60, it becomes a little bit more difficult because you have the age issue. Why should I hire you, old man or old lady, when I can go hire somebody 45 to do this? So you might have to change what you want to do a little bit and use that same methodology to try to gain whatever you're trying to gain. And gosh, I mean, you get older and you kind of lose. You say, wow, where did the years go to? I ask myself sometimes, I look in the mirror and I was like, wow. I said, those years, like 30 years just went by so quick. And I'm like, what happened? I talked to one of my partners. I talk to him if we don't talk every day, we talk every other day. And we talk about the work business, the homeland security stuff. And we've been friends 40 something years. I brought him into the job. He was one of the post sergeant majors of installation here in the U.S. And he was talking about retiring. He wanted to come back to Texas. I said, when you want to come back and what you want to do? And I told him, I had a discussion with the director, and he called me that night. He says, I don't have to come and do an interview. I said, did he say you have to? He said, no. He told me, show up on this date and this time.
I love it.
And that's the way it went. And he worked every area of that agency. Every area he worked at. So nobody can give him any Bravo Sierra. They can't pull the wool over his eyes because he's going to tell them, you know what? You forgot I did that. And what you're telling me isn't true. He is now the deputy director of this whole agency.
Wow. Okay.
He's the number 2 guy. He's actually the number 1 guy. The number 1 guy is there, but he's the number 2 guy because the number 1 guy's in charge, but he's the guy that makes it happen.
He's the one running things. Wow.
Yep.
So you brought up relationships. We kind of talk about, okay, this is what you got to do. You think education is important. Go back to school, find what you love, find your purpose. I guess the first part of that question would be, how do you find your purpose? And then what associations or relationships should you look through during the journey? Should you just hang out with, you said, I have a relationship with the same guy for 40 years.
Sure.
Are there other folks that are part of that? Or how do you create those relationships that can help you move forward?
Great question. I have probably hundreds of people that I know and I talk with periodically, but my circle of friends, I can count on 10 fingers. And these are individuals, I think you had a question that talked about trust. And these are individuals that I can trust. A guy, we talk every couple of months, and he works for FEMA now. And he called me one day. He said, you don't forget anything, Jeff. I said, yeah, and we laugh about it because he would send me pictures of people in the picture, and he would say, who is that in the background? And I would give him the name, the date, the time, the whole nine, and he'd just fall out laughing. He said, you want to know something? Ask Jeff. And so he said to me one time, he says, Jeff, he says, you remember we were in Germany and you borrowed $1,500 from me? And I was laughing, But it wasn't funny because I like to shoot craps. I don't do it much often anymore. Every now and then I might go to the casino. And I was pretty good at what I did. And I said, yeah. And I thought he was going to tell me, you never paid me that money back. I thought he was going to tell me that. But he told me, he said, you know what, man? He said, you went back to the club and you came back and you had 4 times that amount of money in your pocket. And you paid me my money back that night.
Wow.
He said, you gave me my $1,500 back that night. He says, I'm going to tell you something. He says, you got something that some of my brothers can't get from me. He said, you call and you ask me for anything, I'm there for you, brother. I'll always be there. And I'm talking, shoot, we've been friends since 82. And he says, I got brothers and cousins that can't get nothing from me, but you can. And so trust comes in because I believe trust is a cornerstone and a foundation. Without trust, there's a gap in that relationship. There's no continuity there. For me, if someone violates my trust, they lie to me, or I find out they lied, I might not let them know that I know that they were lying. But they'll start getting the long handle spoon treatment. You can't get any of this from me. Don't ask me for that. I'm just that guy. And looking from myself from the inside out, if your trust is violated, no one can trust you. They're looking at you when you come to the house. You can't spend the night and, those type of things. I can't depend on you as far as if I have to get to an appointment and I say, hey, I need to be there at 2:00 and you're late. I mean, you're no good to me. And I'm no good to you because it's not going to be reciprocated. And then once your reputation is ruined, if you're on a job and they find out you're untrustworthy for whatever reason, you didn't tell the truth about something that was produced on the line or something that you missed and you let it go, you just didn't say anything, your reputation is flawed. And that's something you can never get back. I don't think you can get it back. And, we had that saying in the hood, your word is your bond. And once you violate that, I mean, your credibility is gone. Mm-hmm. So I have a deep admiration for trust. That's one of my strong points. And that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, and I think if you're the type of man who, hey, you violated trust, and you've changed, you've grown up, you've matured. I guess they would have to call you because you have all the homeland experience where you could say, can you just hide me somewhere so I can start over, right? Because you can't just go back into the neighborhood. Are there ways that you could rebuild trust, knowing it's going to take a long time to be able to do it, and develop relationships? It sounds like you have figured out how to create relationships because you know something about somebody. Yeah. Was that a skill that you had to work on, or was that just something that came natural? Or did you say intentionally, I'm going to know your name, I'm going to understand who you are, I'm going to, how did you do that? Because you have a lot of really good relationships, deep relationships with people. Like you can say, I can look back 20 years and know who you are still. Yeah, that doesn't come from, hi, how you doing, right?
Yeah, I have an innate, I don't know even what to call it, a gut feeling, I guess you could call it, about people. I'm a very good judge of character. And we go back to, how do you develop some of the things in life that you develop? Mm-hmm. My mom taught me at an early age, if you want to kind of judge somebody, she says, the first thing you do, you look at the exterior. And my mom taught me this. You look at the shoes and work your way up. and I've done that on several different jobs. Even in the dialysis clinic, they had some people interview for jobs, and the head nurse walk them around, and I'd give her a thumbs down, and she'll come back to me later. She says, "Why you give me the thumbs down?" I said, "Did you see the shoes she was wearing?" I said, "Did you see the mud and the dirt on them?" I saw they was a little run over, but, she could have wiped them off a little bit. You see the pants she have on, the hem was hanging out the back. She was walking on the bottom of them, so certain things you acquire with time. She, could have, I'm just going to throw it out there. She could have probably washed them, pressed them, put a couple pins or some tape on the inside of them, gave them a nice little crease to make them look a lot better, so a lot of times, not just me, but most people judge people from the exterior. They always say the first impression is the best impression. And so, you look at a person and you look how they're dressed sometimes. You look how they carry themselves. You look and listen to what comes out of their mouth when they're talking. And then you start making your own assessment. Now, sometimes you can be wrong. I have a young brother in Rotary with me. I guess he is probably, 32, maybe 32. He has his own business. And I like his business because what he does is he has a facility. He takes blue chip students from the school, basketball predominantly, because he graduated from a Division I school. He played ball overseas, came back home, and his program is he takes these kids under his wing. He has a training program physically where he teaches them fundamentals, techniques, tactics, and we also have classes for them on how to carry yourself through life. So often athletes, they come into money, and next thing you know, they're in trouble. They don't know what to do with the money. They buy 15, 16, cars. You can only drive one at a time. You got a Mercedes, you got a Clarion out there. You got all these different cars out there. I mean, why? Because you're being materialistic instead of taking some of that money and maybe building an apartment house or a restaurant so you can reciprocate that money and instead of putting it into material items. And so this young man, me and him usually meet once a week. We'll drink some coffee and some tea, and we'll sit down and talk about things. But instead of giving a hand out, he's trying to bring these young men in so when they get to college, if they get there, they don't get caught up in the game, keeping their head screwed on. Academics will get you to the door. Athletics will get you to the door, but academics will get you through the door. Yeah. And then once you make, well of yourself, for instance, you need to be smart about how you distribute that money because it's only going to last for a long time. If you look at the lifespan on an athlete, you can be here today, gone tomorrow. If you get hurt, your stock go down. Yeah, you got contract money, but, you got to count money, not just the money that you have. You need constant flow of money coming in. And those are the type of things that he teaches in his class. So he has the local law enforcement, fire departments involved. Every year they'll have a basketball tournament where it's a fundraiser where police pay the fire department or other police departments, and free food. And we have breakout sessions with a lot of these young students and sit down and answer their questions. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be in life? I want to make it to the NBA. Only 1% of individuals make it to the NBA. What does your grades look like? I'm a 3.4. Okay, you're on your way, but you need to be getting a 4.4. You know what I mean? A 4.0 rather. And we do this every year. And I don't have a problem with it, going out and raising money at different venues for him, different businesses. And that's one reason I stay in the Rotary, because all the powerhouses are in our local Rotary. And, when you ask for something, it's not too difficult most of the time. You get some chatter, you hear chatter, but I'm like, so, you talk about you're trying to make a difference, but how?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have to come together at. And on that note, I'm going to go to your first question where you asked about why do black men seem to get stuck, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're actually stuck. I think, like I said earlier, they're marking time, and a lot of that has to do with role models. Many black men don't have a positive role model in their life, and I, I'm just going to say a role model in general, because you could have a negative role model in your life and watch them make it big. But how many people have lived a negative lifestyle and then they don't know when to get out of the game and turn right, because the money comes so fast and the luxury and everything. Wow, what's that saying? There's a parable in the Bible about for a man to gain the whole world and lose their soul.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have put anybody out there, but certain music mongo had it all, and now look, you lost it all. And I think sometimes some people of color, some art people get to the top and they don't bring nobody up with them. They just say, well, I made it except everybody else to make it, and it's not about having a hand out, it's a hand up. You reach back to your community. That's one thing I love about it. I'm going to kick some names out there like LeBron. He has his charter school. He gives a lot back to Akron, Ohio. He's there in clinics and different programs for the youth. And you never know how certain things will change an individual's life, the impact you can have. Growing up in Jersey, Drew Pearson lived real close by, Joe Theismann, the McCourtney brothers were members of a local church that the family goes to. Jason Williams, different people. But, they reach back in certain ways. You can't forget where you came from.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of our issues as a cultural society is that, one, we forget where we come from. I made it, it's up to everybody else to make it. The other thing is getting caught up in materialistic things. You're going to go buy this $100,000 car. And then I had just read something not long ago about, the story went, the white guy went and bought a Pontiac GMC or GMA or whatever. GMC is a Chevrolet, so a GMC General Motors car, and it was about during the 60s and 70s. So the black man would always get a Cadillac. Black guys always like Cadillacs. Yeah, it was a status symbol, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you get into the same place.
Yeah, that's true.
And this guy is saving money. They're putting money away for their kids. They're looking at generational wealth. When you're young, you got some kids. Hey, why not take a life policy out on them and watch that thing grow over the years, Generational wealth, you build it. Now, when we die, the only thing we leave is somebody a bill.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great. That's great. Jeff, one of the things I just love for you to do, we've now been talking just about an hour, and would love for you to just kind of, if there's anything I didn't talk about, but I really would love to hear what freedom means to you. You've been part of, a segment of our culture and our country that has defended our ability to have freedom. And I would really love for you just to kind of talk about what that means. And moving forward, as we're on this journey to achieve it, how do we get there?
Well, freedom. That's another, wow, so many different areas of freedom. I think as a society, Black people and people of color, we're never going to be free with this level of racism that we have. We have degrees of freedom. And I think sometimes very rich individuals in our culture think they're free, but you're still not free. You're being held some form of fashion. For me, freedom is like having good health mentally and physically, right? Because if you can't get around physically, if you're not thinking clearly mentally, you're always stressed out. How do you get through that? You're caught up. One of the biggest burdens for us is financial debt, being held slave to credit cards and things that we can't afford because we feel we got to keep up with that status symbol, which isn't really important once you figure it out, you know. I think freedom is being able to wake up in the morning and say, well, man, this job is grinding me, but I gotta go, I gotta do this. You gotta be happy at what you're doing. And to me, I think that's freedom. And far as the military, boy, I mean, we had all different kind of characters that you knew were racist, but we saw green because their life depended on us, and our life depended on them. And you didn't hear all that crazy rhetoric, even though they might be thinking it. But no, nobody never look and say, well, I don't want him covering down on me, or I'm not going to walk point man for this guy. Everybody want to get out of there alive. And then once they get out, they kind of go back. Some people, but then others, have a different outlook and say, man, this guy saved my life, and he didn't have to. And so, different degrees of freedom. But I think for the most part is debt. Falling into unnecessary debt, which brings on strain. And when you bring on strain, you bring on a whole lot of other things with that anxiety. You look at falling out of life, you give up, and that's where faith comes in. You can't give in, you can't give up. You just, no matter how bad it is, that story about the man that cried about not having no feet till he saw the man, not having any shoes till he saw the man that didn't have any feet. And you just got to keep pushing forward and believe that something good is going to happen for you. And on that note, this is a true story that happened in the 70s. There was a homeless guy in Times Square begging. He was not, I'm not even going to say he was, what they say, grimy. He wasn't even grimy. He was slimy, right? And he had his hat out and, people throwing money in there. He's begging. And a guy walked by and threw some money in their hat and recognized his voice and looked at him and said, I'm just using the name. He said, hey, Jim so-and-so? And the guy says, yeah. And he says, what happened to you? He said, and the guy took him in. They had went to Harvard together.
What?
Yeah, the guy, this is a true story. The guy took him in, got him into a 12-step program, got him cleaned up, got him into Wall Street, and he became a big-time trader. Yeah. 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 You never know.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. Well, Jeff, thank you for being part of the podcast today. I have learned a lot. I got several pages of notes here. Would love to talk to the young man that you said is doing some stuff. Maybe we can, set up a time with him. But it has been an enlightenment. It has been fun. I have enjoyed spending this time because you don't know somebody till you spend some time with them. And now that I've got to spend some time with you, I know you're a person I can trust. I know you're a person I can believe in. I know you're a person I can look to as an example. All the challenges and things that you've had in your life, and you still come out on top wanting to help others. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate it and how much the folks that are watching this appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching today, hopefully you'll subscribe if you haven't already, that you'll hit the bell, whatever it is that you need to do, because these stories are stories of people who are making it happen. And if we can take these stories and put them together and get them out to other people, that can enhance their lives, and that we can continue to build this, and we can put groups together. And he talks about being part of the Rotary. There's not a lot of, there's a Rotary, but there's not a lot of groups that you can go to. A lot of people don't even know how to get into the Rotary or different groups. And so I want to make sure that we're putting together places where we can come talk about what it means. Some type of barbershop talks that go deep, not just the barbershop talking about other athletes doing things or singers or something like that. Really get deep into the things that can help you to continue to grow. So I thank you for being part of the Journey to Freedom world or universe. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Don't forget that you are God's greatest gift, and he loves you if you allow him to. And we'll talk to you again on the next one. Have a great one.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you. Get out and vote.